What's going on, everybody? We are back. Episode number 241 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight, we're talking UFC Qatar, little breakfast card Saturday morning. Arman Tsarukyan taking on Dan the Hangman Hooker. Believe we got 14 fight slate. Pretty exciting stuff. Starting at 10 a.m. Eastern. So that's pretty fun. Guys, like the show, drop a like, subscribe. Dixon already in the chat saying, when are we going to get a fancy intro like everyone else? I was literally just trying. Bufo made Danny and myself 4 songs to use as intro tracks. I was literally just trying to get it to work, but sadly, technical difficulties. What else would you expect with our podcast? I am going to try to get that up and running soon. So hopefully next week we'll have an intro music, and who knows, maybe we'll get someone to do some art for us too. But that'll probably happen in a year with how slow I tend to move on this stuff. Anyway, UFC Qatar this weekend. We had UFC 322 last weekend. It was a good card for me. I went up 4.28 units. Only side I lost, I had Sean Brady for 2.62 units at minus 131. I gotta say, I think the takes that, why didn't Brady wrestle, are pretty dumb. Like, Michael Morales just did a really good job measuring distance and staying back. Like, Brady doesn't have the hands to close the distance. I thought personally that Morales was going to leave him some openings to kind of clinch him up, press him to the fence, do some wild stuff. But he fought really, really disciplined. So, yeah, I give credit to Michael Morales. It wasn't a great bet. He knocked out Brady early. Who knows what happens if Brady gets on top of him, but yeah, I don't blame it on Brady at all. He just couldn't get inside and he got picked apart. I also had Brady by sub for 0.25 units, which also lost. I did bet Ethan Ewing at plus 350 for a unit and a half against Malcolm Wellmaker. That was tremendous. Ethan Ewing, pretty good fighter. Malcolm Wellmaker, pretty good fighter, but not the next Sean O'Malley, as I think we all saw up there, which is more or less what I thought. Like, I'm not low on Wellmaker. I think he's going to have a pretty good UFC career. I just didn't really buy him as being like a top 10 to 15 guy. And, Ewing's pretty good. So at least for a debutant. So we'll see where Wellmaker gets in his next fight. Maybe we'll even get, to buy low on Wellmaker in his next fight. That would be nice. I had Valentina Shevchenko for 2.32 units at minus 116. That was, it was probably one of the best couple bets on the card. She obviously dominated. I think I mentioned it on the show, but like the biggest thing for me was just looking at what she had done to 115-pound women when she fought them physically. Just the physicality, the difference was insane. And even on the feet, Weili is pretty heavily reliant on physicality. Shevchenko just way too technical for her. Little bit of a speed disadvantage, but it didn't really matter. That was about as easy as it gets. How'd you do, Danny?
Only had 2 plays and won both of them, so it was a 3-unit night for me, so it was great. So I had Valentina similar to you at minus 125 to win a unit and a half. And then I had a parlay with the BSD fight to not go the distance at minus 240. And then the Dawkins GM3 fight to not go the distance minus 240. Comes out at like minus 102. Play that to win unit and a half as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of upset with myself that I didn't bet the under 1.5 in the Dawkins fight. That was just like so free. And I was like looking at it all week too and just never pulled the trigger on it. But yeah, we move into this one. We got Qatar. I'll be honest with you, Danny, I have not looked at all at the first fight of the night. I've looked at everything else, but I've been trying to get myself to tape Marek Bujlo against Denzel Freeman and just cannot seem to find the motivation to get myself there, unfortunately. So I have no strong opinion here. Denzel, what'd you say?
I was going to say, it's fine that you don't really have like a strong opinion. Like, this fight's not like a great one. Like, I did tape it, to be honest with you. But go ahead.
No. I was just going to say the current price, Freeman's about minus 190, I believe. The comeback on Bujlo is about plus 170. You taped it. Take it away. Tell me what you think.
At minus 190, I don't know if there's a ton of meat on the bone. I think like it was hovering around like minus 150, 170-ish. Like, I think that's probably where I like maybe would have went in on Freeman, because to me, I just think Freeman's a better wrestler of the two. Like, on the feet, not to mention Freeman's a better striker. There's not a ton of tape of this Bulio guy really in general, and he's looking to just close distance pretty fast, trying to get fights to the mat. Obviously, his wrestling's not that great. There's just limited footage of him really, and Freeman to me just seems like, again, much more serviceable wrestler, better cardio, decent hands as well. So he should probably find a finish. I think he should just be able to dominate him in the grappling.
Yeah, that's interesting. We move on. Yeah. We got Sagid Isagamay. He's taking on Nicholas Dalby. Isagamay is minus 315. The comeback on Dalby is plus 265. I did look at this. Isagamay, kind of a grappler base. He's a decent striker as well. I think he's a pretty good fighter, pretty well rounded, decent athlete. He's actually relatively experienced coming to the UFC. I think he's got 25 or 26 pro fights, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty strong submission grappler regionally. Dalby, you know the drill. He's a grinder. Dude's been around forever. Million fights, fought pretty good competition. Always a tough task, especially for a debutant. He's going to push a pace. He's going to come out there, try to clinch you up, beat you up there, maybe land a takedown or two. Whether he can do that here, I don't know. I think the Nicholas Dalby train has more or less run its course. He's 41 years old. He's been, I don't want to say he's taken a ton of damage. He usually fights in a manner that doesn't lend itself to taking damage. But, he did get knocked out pretty brutally in his last fight. I think, it's reasonable to expect I think it's a reasonable thing to expect that, he's going to continue to decline here, and likely we're going to get a pretty steep cliff at some point, which is, the one concern about the one play that I'm kind of looking at here. I don't really want to bet Dalby at this point, just because I think Dalby's downside in any given fight is fairly significant because of his age and his form. But I am kind of interested in the over. Siggy, he's a decent submission grappler, but like Nick Dalby's been in there with some fucking damn good submission grapplers, and he's never been subbed once in his career. I don't think, Siggy is like the biggest hitter in the world, though I actually do think the KO threat is the bigger threat to this fight finishing here. So, yeah, but like I am kind of, it's like a pick 'em goes the distance against a guy whose typical primary path to finishing is on the mat, and I don't think he's going to finish Dalby there. And Dalby, I mean, if he has his way, he's going to try to, just kind of avoid striking a distance and clinch up a lot or play on the outside a lot. I think it has the makings of a GTD. I'm concerned about where Dalby's chin is at this point. What do you think, Danny?
So similar to you with the last fight, this is one I didn't take a ton on the Ziggy side.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with you in terms of like the KO threat being more like, I'm more scared of that happening and him knocking out Dalby than him subbing Dalby. He just doesn't seem like a great wrestler either, to be honest with you. Just doesn't seem super physical. I think Dalby could at least match that. But again, the age is definitely a concern. Yeah,
agreed. Moving on, we got Narulo Aliv. He's coming back off a decent layoff, I think, fighting Shahim Rock. Current price, Aliv minus 275. The comeback on Rock plus 235. What do you think, Danny?
It's one I could never do business with Aliv at like huge chalk, but like Rock to me just seems like I don't know, he kind of just needs an early finish, to be honest with you. Like he just doesn't seem great process in general, whereas I feel like Aliv should be able to just rinse and repeat with the wrestling. Quite frankly, stay safe.
Yeah, I think Rock's a decent athlete. For a debutant, pretty solid submission grappler. But I'm kind of with you. His game is very much like oriented around attacking immediately, trying to get the fight down and submitting guys. And he might be the better striker in this fight, though I'm not really sure. Aliv's not a terrible striker. Rock's a decent striker for grappler. My issue is just like, I don't think his jiu-jitsu is such that it's going to give Aliv many top problems on top of him. And I think the takedowns are going to be almost free for Aliv here. So I kind of feel like Rock needs to either land something heavy on the feet or kind of wrap his neck up, which, I mean, I guess could happen. And if he gets on top of Aliv, don't get me wrong, like Aliv looked pretty bad underneath Joe Selecki in round 3 of his last fight. But Joe Selecki is also like a world-class jiu-jitsu player. I have a hard time putting Shahim Rock in the same tier top game, Joe Selecki. So, yeah, I mean, there's actually a part of me that's like considered playing Aliv and just laying the big chalk here. I just don't really like Aliv as a fighter, though, man. Like, he's kind of low volume, even on top. He's not usually the most active guy. But I do think, the chances of Rock knocking him out are relatively low. I think the chances of Rock subbing him are relatively low. And I think from a process standpoint, the takedown, I mean, Brick Squad just said it. He's like shitty Patty the Patty. I think from a process standpoint, Aliv should be able to get takedowns and, control. What about you?
It should be a good fight for him.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on, we have got Ryan Loder taking on Ismail Nordivv. Current odds, money's been coming in on Loder. Nordiv's minus 131. The comeback on Loder plus 111. I took Loder earlier in the week at like 150, but I don't know if I would dabble with him here at this current price right now. I don't know. I think it's a decent fight for him. I mean, the biggest concern I have for Ryan Loder here is just, while they're fresh, the explosiveness and speed and athleticism of Nordivv should give him a significant advantage on the feet here. Loder, he's a wrestler, pretty good kicker, but I don't like the rest of his striking really at all. He's very wooden on the feet. He almost fights. I don't want to call it a karate stance, but it's close. But his head's right on the center line, chin's up in the air. You kind of saw that with Beckov last fight, came back to haunt him. Beckov knocked him down a couple times and eventually knocked him out. I do somewhat worry that Nordivv can go forward and swing on him early in this fight. Having said that, one, I don't know why Nordivv is fighting at 185. He is not a big 185er at all. He fought at 170 for basically his entire career. I also I don't think he's got bad power, but like Nordivv's got 2 knockouts in his last 14 fights. I know he's got like 12 on his record, but really since he started fighting, a reasonable level of competition, he isn't really knocking guys out. And so I don't think the chances of a knockout are super duper high here. And in the grappling, it's pretty interesting. Nordivv is a good offensive wrestler, but I think Loder is the better grappler in the aggregate, and he might be the better wrestler in the aggregate. And I also think, like I said, Loder's a big 185er. Nordivv's been a welterweight his whole career, and to me, does not look like a 185 pounder. I think Nordivv's going to be Loder's going to be way stronger in the clinch. But even saying all that, I do think the early portion of this fight likely favors Nordivv here. I just feel like Nordivv, we know what he is. He tends to slow down and get tired in almost every fight. And when he does, he tends to break pretty hard. And I feel like Loder, if he's not dead at the end of round 1, the takedowns are going to start coming easier, and he's going to probably just abuse Nordivv on the mat down the stretch here. So yeah, like with that dynamic, when Nordivv's equity is so front-loaded, and even a Nordivv decision probably relies on him winning round 1 and then winning the first half to 4 minutes of round 2 and edging it out. I just don't see a lot of wide decision equity for Nordivv here, whereas I could easily picture Loder doing that. I can easily picture Loder finishing him. Frankly, the Loder 2-3 kind of interests me a bit. But yeah, I lean the Loder side here. What do you think? All right, Danny just popped off the chat. Dixon saying ends in split decision. Yeah, I mean, maybe. It could be like a tale of 2 fights type of deal. Danny, you hear me? Danny having some issues. All right, so we will move on here. We have got Bekzat Alicon. He's taking on Alexandre Taporia. This line's been all over the place, very back and forth. Currently, Alicon minus 115. Come back on Taporia minus 105. I bet Taporia at plus 112. I still think there's some value on him here. I personally put him in like the minus 135 range in this fight. I mean, look, at the end of the day, Alicon has been, he's got more fights than Taporia. Obviously, he's got 2 fights in the UFC. The Taporia's 1. He's got many more fights overall. But the truth is, Alicon fought at a pretty low level of competition regionally. I think we haven't learned a ton about him. He's got decent work rate, solid power. He's an okay wrestler. But there isn't really a whole lot else that Alicon, I shouldn't say there's not a whole lot else he's bringing to the table, but his game is still very much an unknown to me in a lot of respects. You look at his guy and his 2 UFC fights, everybody talks about him knocking down Umar Nurmagomedov, but that wasn't really a knockdown, I don't think. He kind of slipped, and then Nurmagomedov took him down with ease and held him down for 13 minutes. No shame. Umar's a great grappler. I can't give him shit for that. I have seen him taken down regionally, though. And then the Katona fight, he knocked out Brett Katona. Credit to him. I bet him in that spot. But, it was an uppercut while Brett Katona was changing levels. It doesn't really tell me terribly much about how his power is going to translate in the UFC. So more or less what I think of Alicon is he's a decent striker who gets in and out, but he is a bit hittable. And he's going to be relying on his speed and power in a lot of fights. On the Taporia side, he's much more inexperienced. There's not nearly as much tape on him. Only 6 fights total, 1 in the UFC, beat Colby Thickness fairly easily in his first fight last year. I do like what I see from Taporia, though, to be honest. He's got He seems to be really durable. He hits really hard. He's a pretty good wrestler. He's a pretty good submission grappler. Obviously, you know the pedigree he comes from. He's not as good as his brother, but he's training with him. He's getting the same training, similar skill set. I think maybe not as much power, but a lot of power. And I look at this fight and I feel like, Almacon's probably a more diverse striker, but I think he's much easier to hit than Taporia is. I think of the two, Taporia is more likely to win by knockout. I think of the two, Taporia is more likely to have big moments. And I think of the two, Taporia is more likely to get takedowns and control in this fight. So with that dynamic, I think the biggest question for me is just what's Taporia going to look like if the fight's fought at a high pace, for 15. I'm not really at all convinced that Alicon is going to push that kind of a pace, and I think Taporia's power is likely to deter it at a pretty high clip. I will say Alicon, having fought so much more than Taporia concerns me and having fought a higher level of competition. But at the same time, I just can't near pick him. I can't not back the guy who has the power edge and the grappling edge and who's likely improving at a more rapid clip. So, yeah, I took Taporia for 2 units here. I like him. What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, I don't hate it. I guess speaking of the Loader fight first, since I cut out there real quick, had a little sound difficulty on my end. I completely agree with you on the Loader side. Just I would have wanted that earlier number, really. Like I think the wrestling and the cardio edge is totally there for Ryan, but like to your point, I mean Nordivv, he's going to be good round 1, but it's definitely going to snowball later. Like so, yeah, I definitely like him at the early numbers, but around plus 105, plus 110, not a ton of interest. This fight though, I don't really want to just say, it's a cop out, but just not a ton of fight footage in general from both guys, really. Like I think it's just gonna be a great fight. Like I want to say that there's a great durability edge for the Taporia side, but like he seems like kind of easy to hit too. Like I think it's gonna be, a great fight on the feet. I don't think there's a ton of wrestling. I mean, like, to your point, if there's gonna be wrestling upside, it's gonna be the Taporia side. I just don't know how much actually there,
Yeah,
to
fair.
tap that in there really. So I feel like it's just
I think it's going to be a close fight much more often than not,
Yeah.
But like a close fight, the guy who's probably has more improvement upside and more finishing upside,
More finishing upside.
That pick him. So, yeah, moving on though, we have got a pretty good fight here. Kyoji Horiguchi taking on Tagir Ulan Beckov. Current price Ulan Beckov minus 205. The comeback on Horiguchi plus 175. I think Tagir should do fine here, honestly. Like Kyoji in his prime, I'd be fairly, interested in at this prime. I mean, it'd be an easy click in his prime. But I think even though they're only a year apart, to me, it seems pretty clear that the miles are packing on to Horiguchi here. He's kind of taking shots as well. He looks slower. He's going to close fights with pretty suboptimal competition. Obviously, he's always had, some issues on bottom. But now he's taking on Tagir. Tagir looks like he's in his prime. Look, technically speaking, I think Kyoji's a better striker here, but Tagir's way bigger. He's longer. I think he probably hits a fair bit harder than Horiguchi does at this point. In the grappling, Tagir's just way better. I don't know if he'll get Horiguchi down or not. I don't think his wrestling is the best in the world, but I do think he's powerful enough to just drag him down a couple times. And I kind of think if he does, he's going to control him or get his back here. So kind of similar to the mix fight. Like I'm not saying Tagir's back takes are as good as mixes, but I do think he can get them here if he gets takedowns. So, yeah, I mean, I think Kyoji's aging out. I think he's a fighter from a different generation, whereas I think Tagir's game is pretty well tailored towards MMA today. I think he's the more likely to win by finish. I think he's got much more grappling upside. I think there's just much higher likelihood that Kyoji continues to get worse and worse here. So the line's fine, maybe even a little short to me. What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, I'm with you on this fight too. Like to me, the size and the grappling is a huge part of the dynamic too with Horiguchi. Like Tagir is going to be much bigger than him, much more physical. Like I think he can just drag him down to the mat there, and to your point, control him on the mat. And on the feet, I think honestly, I think Tagir's a bit better striker than you give him credit for. Like not that he might be a better technical striker than Horiguchi, but like I think at this stage of their career, he might be.
Yeah, it's possible. I don't know. I mean,
prime,
maybe.
Definitely not. Like, I agree with you. Like, in their prime, no, but, like, definitely regressing.
Yeah, I agree with that. Moving on, terrible fight here. We got Abdul Rahman Yakayv taking on Rafael Cerqueira. Yakayv is minus 1,400. The comeback on Cerqueira is plus 850. Yeah, I'm not going to say a lot here. Yakayev's a pretty good prospect. He's a really good grappler. He's a pretty good striker. He's got power. He can finish on the mat. Cerqueira's terrible. He did kind of not didn't embarrass himself against Julius Walker, but it doesn't tell me much. The line's minus 1,400 for a reason. I won't be taking a dog shot. I think it's going to probably be a quick execution and probably in the first round. What do you think, Danny?
Same here, and that's actually what I was looking at while you were talking there, just to see if there was any kind of like round one props up, because he's just going to go out here, I feel like, and just finish him early. And it could be KO, could be sub, because I feel like he could just take him down, either pound him out or just find a quick sub. Or even on the feet, he could KO. Like, Serkera's not the most durable fighter in the world. So,
yeah, agreed. Moving on, really interesting fight here. We got Luke Riley making his UFC debut. He's minus 250. He's taking on Bogdan Grad. The comeback on Grad is plus 210. What do you think, Danny?
Riley at big chalk gives me just pause, just because I feel like Bogdan could mix in the grappling. You know, he's pretty physical, and obviously that's where we've seen like the weakness in Riley's game. But like on the feet, I mean, we've talked about this before. Bogdan's such a bot on the feet. Yeah. Bot than Grad, you know, walking forward. This should be easy work for Riley on the feet. He's got big power. Bogdan does as well, so he definitely could find Riley on the feet. He's not the most defensively sound fighter, but to me, I think Riley should be able to find a good finish here on Bogdan standing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I really want to bet Grad and get to a Grad bet here.
Yeah.
I wanted to going into tape, but like leaving tape, I was just like, man, like, look, a lot of stars are aligning to fade Luke Riley here. You know, he's a cage warrior striker. He's very hittable. He's been hurt a bunch of times before. His grappling is kind of suspect. He does have really good cardio, though, and he hits reasonably hard and high volume. Grad, I'm assuming, is going to try to wrestle him, you know, like he did to Nemov last fight, like he did to Lucas Alexander. And, you know, I think he could have some success with it. I think he'll get takedowns if he wants them. My big issue is just, first of all, I don't think Grad's control is all that good, to be honest, on the mat. I don't think his wrestling is all that good. I think it's much more physicality based than anything else. And, you know, that might be enough to get takedowns on Luke Riley here. I think it probably will be. I just don't know if he'll control him, because, like, Riley will give his back to get up. And, I mean, I know it's Nemov, but I didn't really love how loose that, you know, that body triangle he tried to put in when he took his back was. Like, I don't think it's going to be that hard to scramble out of. And on the feet, you know, I just feel like Riley is the much more likely to win by finish. Having said that, what Dogfather just said in the chat is pretty accurate. He said a minus 250 striker who gets hurt by every decent striker he fights. I don't think that's inaccurate. And I think there's a lot of scope for Grad to win this fight, whether it be on the feet or grinding out a decision. I don't like betting a guy with potentially suspect chin who's got poor cardio and who much of his win equity is reliant on him coming out here and pushing a hellacious grappling pace. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with it yet. I'm still thinking about Grad, just because, dude, I mean, like, if I don't bet Grad and Riley goes out here and just gets fucking mogged for, you know, 15 minutes, I'm going to be like sick to my stomach about it.
Decision if it's a big number.
Yeah, that's not bad. I do think if they're on the feet, I think Riley's going to probably find a knockout shot on him at some point. But
475.
I mean, how often, like, I was talking to Pepe the other day, and he said this, and I don't think he's wrong. He was like, Grad just fought Muhammad Nemov, beat Michael Aswell by decision, beat Lucas Alexander, and he's plus 210 to a cage warrior striker. That is a pretty crazy dynamic, honestly. It really is. It really, really is. I guess my opinion of Grad's game is just like, it's very, very low. You know, I bet Alexander big against him. I laid the juice on Nemov against him. I bet Aswell against him on Contender Series. But I do think he could take him into the swamp, honestly. I do.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So
I'm not interested in the juice here, but
no, I mean, can't be interested in the juice on Luke Riley. Luke Riley, he's going to get sunned eventually. The question is whether or not it's here as a minus 250 favorite. But it might be. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Moving on, we have got, oh God, you know what's going to happen here. Auabaya, I've taken on my boy Alex Perez. Auabaya minus 202. The comeback on Perez plus 172. I haven't bet it yet. I'm going to keep waiting because I think this line's going to get wider. But I am, of course, going to bet Alex Perez. Look, I don't know where he's at. It's deeply concerning to me that he had a major knee injury last year, and then he had another injury this summer. I'm very worried about where he's at physically at this point in his career, but the truth of the matter is he's a much better fighter here. You know, and now Where is he the much better fighter today? I'm not sure. And I think that's the big question here. But I think it's overpriced by the market. Like Asu's entire game here, I think we all know, is he needs to get his grappling going to win this fight. There was some concern. I think there's probably some market concern for how low volume Perez's performance against Mokaev was on the feet. But like, dude, I mean, Mokaev was like a championship contender, Asu isn't that. He's much busier than Asu is on. Like the guy out volumed Cop. Like, Asu he's not busy at all.
That was an awful fight too. Like that was pretty low volume too, though.
Yeah, but my point is, I mean, look what Cop just did to fucking Asu. It's like Asu is not low volume on the feet at all. So like Perez is probably not going to get punished for his lack of volume here nearly as much as he did against Mokaev. And like if they're in boxing range, Perez has way better hands and way more power than Asu. I think the calf kicks will impact him. The whole big question of the fight is whether or not Asu can get, takedowns and like top or back control. And unless Perez is like physically handicapped at this point, I think it's a tough ask. He's got really good takedown defense. I mean, Mokaev went 3 for 20 on takedowns against him. Really struggled to control him outside of the one time he got his back. I think Asu can get his back. The problem for me is Asu is so small, man. His legs are so little. I don't think he can get. I'm almost positive he can't get a body triangle on Perez. And if he does, it's probably going to get broken. Like even I know it's very vivid in people's memories, like Tyra taking his back and him ripping his knee apart. But dude, he was doing a pretty good job fighting the body triangle on Tyra. That's why he started flailing back and trying to get Perez off balance. And so I don't really think Asu can get his back. And if he can't get his back and you can't keep him down, then what? Then what happens here? Then it's like he is basically relying on a low volume fight where the fight swings on a bunch of takedowns, which that could happen. That's definitely possible. And there's certainly some upside with Perez's injuries. So like, I don't make Perez a big favorite because I do think his floor is pretty low. And I think Asu, doing well with optics could be a thing. But I mean, 67% against Alex Perez, that's crazy to me. I would make Perez a pretty comfortable favorite if I knew he were healthy. I think building in all the uncertainty and making it around pick'em, but I like Perez here. What do you think?
I'm honestly probably going to join you on Perez just because, I mean, the only thing that really was keeping me back is what you talked about earlier is just the low volume performance in the Mokaev fight because like that fight was on the table for him to win if the dude just asserts himself a little more.
Like just do a couple more ground strikes. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, defensively wise, grappling, and looked great. Stuffed a ton of the takedowns, was shoving the head, had good ghillie temps, this and that. Just not a ton of volume, and that was really the big thing I'd be harping on. But yeah, I mean, I'll probably have a small play on Alex though.
Low key, Perez sub could be a thing. Yeah. If Asu takes a bad shot, he was afraid to kind of attack it against Mokaev because of how fast Mokaev is. I don't think he's going to be afraid to attack it against Asu, to be honest with you. Because he had Mokaev in that kind of a front headlock position where he could have attacked it, and he just didn't go for it. But
Bet Online has 12-1.
I'm interested. I am interested. I think I'll be there, honestly. Perez sub. Moving on, we've got Sergey Spivac taking on Shamil Gaziev. Current price, Shamil is a small favorite. He is minus 140. The comeback on Gaziev plus 120. What do you think here, Lex?
Part of me wants to say that like Gaziev is probably one of the easiest clicks of the week. And part of me also thinks that like this could easily look like just an absolute horrible bet. Maybe a few minutes in if Spivac is able to get on top of him because I feel like the cardio dynamic could snowball. Like I get it. Spivac doesn't have the greatest cardio either. But like Gaziev, if he's pushed early in the fight, that could easily, to me, snowball in the fight. But to me, I think on the feet, Gaziev has much bigger power here. I think should be able to have big moments, should be able to hurt Spivac, should be able to find a finish early, I think, before even any grappling probably ensues. I just think he's just going to be a tough guy to grapple, I feel like. Big man, super physical.
Yeah, I mean, I'm eventually going to bet Gaziev here, to be honest. I feel like I look at, and I've bet Spivac a fair amount throughout his career, but I look at him.
We talked about it.
Yeah, and like, can he get takedowns on Shamil? I think so, potentially. He could potentially get takedowns, but I've seen enough tape of Shamil on bottom. He knows what he's doing, man. He's not going to sit there and just lay on his back. He's a pretty good scrambler. He's got pretty good get-ups. I actually think Spivac is far worse on bottom than Gaziev is. Like, I think if Gaziev gets on top of him, he'll probably control him. But even beyond that, like, taking it a step further here, or a step before that, How many times have we seen Sergey Spivac sit in there and be uncomfortable with a guy with big power in front of him who goes forward? Like, how many times has it happened to him in his career? You know, like
all the time.
yeah, a bunch of
Really all
times.
the time.
Yeah, and like his takedowns are so heavily reliant on clinching up that if he is like kind of scared of like pushing inside with you, he can't really get takedowns. You saw it in the gun. Now it's Cyril Gahn, and I'm not comparing Gaziev to Cyril Gahn, but like I think that's a pretty good example because he had that in theory there was a path to victory there for him, and he just couldn't get close to Gahn without getting hit, and he just kind of gave up, And I don't expect Gaziev to be countering him like Gahn did, but I think Gaziev's probably going to put him on the back foot early here. We know Spivac's low volume on the feet. We know he's willing to accept shots, power shots from guys without throwing back. We've seen it happen enough times now. I'm not convinced he's going to assert himself on the feet enough to actually get into the clinch with Gaziev and take him down. So I think there's a lot of upside for Gaziev just coming out and blowing him out of the water here because Spivac won't engage. Yeah. I think there's plenty of upside for Spivac trying to engage and getting out grappled himself. For Gaziev, the downside, we know what it is, the cardio, right? It's like he could gas out and, then it looks terrible down the stretch. But I think there's a fair amount of early KO equity here. I also think it's possible that Spivac tries to push the grappling late into this fight and just gets out grappled or ends up on bottom and can't get up. That's not a crazy possibility to me. So it's like I think Gaziev's got way more early finish equity. I think he's got way more moment equity. I mean, look, yes, he could gas out and lose this fight. It'll look terrible. But I don't know. I think given just how dominant I expect the early going of this fight to look, I've got to put him at, in the minus like 160, minus 165 range.
I was going to say, it's tough to have him like around minus 140 if you don't project Spivac grappling him early at a high clip.
Yeah. But also, what happens if Spivac comes out grappling hard early? Is he not going to slow down if he's having to get counter grappled a bunch too?
Yeah.
I think it's possible. I think Spivac getting subbed is possible, to be honest with you. So, hot take. But yeah, I do like
John saying parlay Perez sub and
Perez sub spin and Gaziev sub. Yeah.
Yes.
I just, man, I've watched it happen too many times with him, and it's like this isn't Greg Hardy, and it's not Tai Tuivasa, and it's not Augusto Sakai, and it's not Derek Lewis. Like Derek Lewis is probably better than Gaziev, but like he's not going to go end up, falling over by a stiff gust of wind and just being able to be tripped up easily to get back down. So. Yeah, I mean, with Spivac, it's pretty easy. And I bet him last fight against Waldo because, I'm like, man, he's fighting this guy who can't wrestle, who only has a jab. Like, it should be pretty straightforward for him. And he couldn't grapple fucking Waldo, Like, that's the the whole basis of this bet is he's going to grapple Shamil Gaziev, and he couldn't grapple Waldo or Cortez Acosta in his last fight. Like, that's what the basis of Spivac is here, So, I don't know. Give me Gaziev.
I'm with you, John.
Moving on, we got the Joker, Jack Hermanson, coming back off a nasty KO. He's taking on Miktabek Oralby. Oralby, good size favorite here at the moment. He is minus 240. The comeback on Hermanson, plus 205. What do you think, Danny?
Honestly, once I saw this fight was at 170, it just gave me awful vibes for Hermanson. Like, it just seems like a horrible decision. Again, first time in his career really cutting down to 170. I don't think, though, Oralby pushing a grapple pace and, grapple fucking Hermanson is super live though. Like Hermanson's pretty strong himself, and obviously we've never really seen it in the UFC. So it's I think Jack can definitely provide some resistance though. My big issue on the feet though is Oralby is much bigger hitter. We've seen Jack. I mean, durability is kind of a bit in question. I don't think Jack's going to have a ton of offensive grappling success himself. So I lean Oralby. I think the numbers may be fine, maybe a tad wide.
Yeah, 37 coming off the KO and coming down 15 pounds in weight is just an incredibly bearish scenario.
Turnaround too, quickish turnaround.
Yeah, a couple months. It's a very, very bearish scenario to me. From a fight perspective, I don't in a vacuum. I would love Hermanson at this number. I think he's got the much more reliable volume of the two. He's the bigger guy. I don't really think Oralby has too much upside grappling him, that's I think he'll get some takedowns, but I really would be quite surprised if he just grapple fucks Jack. If he just grapple fucks Jack, I mean Jack's just fucked, that would surprise me. So, but yeah, I mean, look, Jack's obviously declining. He's getting older. He just suffered a brutal knockout. We don't know how this weight cut's going to go. We don't know how his cardio is going to hold up. the move to 170 is perplexing to me because he wasn't a small 185er,
No.
So as much as I want to say there's value on Jack because I think skill for skill he can compete in this fight, it's really, really tough for me to kind of get there, especially because, and I hate to say this about him, but Jack's kind of a bit of a beta on the feet. He'll throw his volume at you, but like
he's not trying to fight.
Yeah, and if you're throwing hammers at him, he tends to just try to fight, like circle off and point fight with you. It's why he lost the first 2 rounds to Piper. He basically didn't do anything but calf kick and throw teeps until Piper gassed out. But in a 3-round fight, it's a very different type of fight, right? And Oralby is going to be able to just kind of swing power shots at him the whole fight if he wants. And
I think I'd be more concerned. I'd honestly be more concerned with Jack, like just the size of him, maybe like landing a takedown or 2 on Oralby and doing good work on top. Because on the feet, to your point, I don't think there's a ton of damage obviously coming back from the Jack side.
If Jack gets on top of Oralby, he could fuck him up. But right. He's not a great wrestler, man. Like he's a very good grappler, but he's not a very good wrestler. And his wrestling is incredibly non-physical. It's very much like Greco type game, Like I have a hard time picturing like if Jack can get on top of him and consolidate, yes, I can see him doing some work there. I have a very hard time picturing that though, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean it's a pass for me. I just feel like you're kind of like you're kind of like getting in trying to step in the way of a boulder that's rolling downhill right now with Jack by betting him. And I'd just rather not get hit by that boulder. Maybe it does veer off and go the other way, and I'm wrong. But I'm choosing not to get on the hill. That's my
it's a good stance, man. Here. It's a good stance.
Yeah. Moving on, we got Volkan Udemir taking on Alonzo Menfield. Current price Udemir minus 225. The comeback on Menfield plus 190. I don't know if I'll bet it or not, but I lean the Udemir side fairly strongly here. I mean, they're both on the back end to a degree, but I think Menfield's a lot more past it than Udemir is personally. Volkan just had a pretty competitive fight with, Carlos Ulberg. He's still out there putting his best foot forward against pretty good competition. Whereas, Menfield was never really at that top 5 to 8 level, right? He's always been a guy who's like, very good defensive grappler, good athlete, good power, good counters, but he's always been low volume. He's always been kind of gassy. He's a guy who beats guys that don't belong in the top 15. That's kind of what he is. He doesn't really beat guys above that. He could knock out Volkan. I mean, that wouldn't shock me. But I do think Volkan's the far better boxer here. I think he's got way more durability than Menfield has. I don't really think Menfield is all that much of a grappling threat in this fight. I think the leg kicks from Volkan are potentially huge here. I don't see Menfield being able to really check those or deal with them. And I think the cardio difference is massively favors Volkan. And then, on top of that, even from a macro standpoint, like, dude, I'm pulling it up now, but look at the guys who've beaten Volkan Ozdemir in his career. It's like Carlos Ulberg, Nikita Krylov, when Nikita Krylov was really good, Ankalaev, Jiri, Reyes in his prime, and that was a split where he arguably got robbed, and Anthony Smith and Daniel Cormier. Like the dude doesn't really like lose to fighters in this tier, it's a pretty decent step down in competition for Volkan. And I think like Menfield kind of needs to like meme his way to a win, whether that's a KO or a couple of wobbles on the way to a decision. But I think Volkan's got a lot of room for error here. Well, what about you?
I mean, it's definitely a bit like, it's definitely a bit queasy, with Volkan as a huge favorite like this. But to me, I completely agree with you. Like, and I don't even think like stealing big moments to a decision is that even live on the table here, because I feel like across 15 minutes, I mean, Volkan, much more technical striker. I mean, his durability's, definitely been in question.
Good.
It's honestly not, it's pretty good. Yeah.
It's good.
Pretty good. It's better than Menfield's.
Much better. Dude, I mean, he took Ulberg shots with like no problem, honestly.
I was actually going to ask you this, like, Walker or Menfield? Like, how do you line that?
Competitive when we saw it. Oh, you mean Johnny Walker?
Yeah, Johnny Walker.
Competitive. The competitive in my fight. Yeah. Right. That's what that is. Yeah. I mean, Menfield's not as chinny as Johnny Walker is, but also he's been getting cracked a bit lately too. So, and he's old, man. I think he's older than Volkan is. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I think he's like 37 or 38, isn't he?
I think they're right around the same age. Let me pull that up.
Yeah, Menfield's 38, and Volkan is 36. So
Okay.
yeah, Menfield is older than him. Moving on, we have a pretty intriguing co-main event here. Ian Machado Gary taking on Bilal. Remember the name Muhammad. The current price Gary minus 250. The comeback on Muhammad plus 210. I feel like the line's a little wide, just because Gary hasn't really been tested by a real wrestler yet. Something that kind of, I don't want to put too much stock into it because it's two totally different fights. But the way how easy Edwards was able to grapple Prates was kind of alarming to me when you consider, how much trouble Gary had grappling him. And then obviously, if you wanted to have MMA math that even more, Bilal ran over Leon in the grappling to a degree. So I think Bilal getting his grappling game going here is pretty on the table personally. There's still a fair amount of questions about Gary and what he's going to, Shavkat had a fair amount of success against him early. So Bilal getting his grappling going or staying in his face, mixing in a couple takedowns and winning a decision seems reasonably live to me. The big issue I have is just, Bilal also seems like he's toward the end. I thought he looked terrible against Jack. He implemented a very poor game plan. And if he comes out here and does that with Ian Gary, he's going to get picked apart. I just don't think he can really stand with him for long periods of time. I still think Gary's getting a lot better. The guy's cross-training all over the world. Every fight, he seems to improve. He's a reasonably well-rounded fighter. I feel like the line is a bit disrespectful to Bilal, given his process, given the quality of victories he's achieved lately, given he's going to come forward and take it to Ian. But at the same time, I do make Gary a moderate favorite. I do just think his youth and his movement and his striking is probably going to be enough here. But I don't have much interest in doing anything with it. And if anything, I think I lean the Muhammad side. What do you think?
I played Gary by decision at minus 120.
Okay.
I mean, Bilal historically durable. And to me, I feel like, to your point, I think Bilal can get some grappling going a little bit, but I don't think it's super meaningful. And to me, on the feet, Gary should be able to keep distance here, laying good shots on the feet. Again, minimize the grappling to as minimal as possible, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's basically what it comes down to, really, right? Can Bilal get the takedowns or not? So
yeah.
And on the feet, Bilal's got good boxing as well. It's more so getting into that range. So I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and the big cage should benefit Gary to a fair amount. But yeah, that's a fun fight. I'm excited for it. It could be a boring fight, honestly, but
that's what I think. Yeah,
it's a good matchup on paper, though. It's two top guys in the division, and if he and Gary wins this, I'd imagine Gary's potentially next for Islam if he wins this fight. Given Bilal is the number one ranked welterweight, I believe. Moving on, though, we have got Arman Tsarukyan taking on Dan the Hangman Hooker. It's the main event. Not lined very competitively. Arman minus 500. Dan Hooker plus 375. This is after Arman, or after Dan Hooker shocked the world as a big underdog against Mateusz Gamrot and won. But, the market's saying we don't give a fuck about that. We still think you're a big dog here at Arman Tsarukyan. Do you agree with that, Danny? You think there's value on Hooker? What do you think?
I think minus 600 is getting him a little wild, But at the same time, I see huge grappling upside for Arman in the fight. I see huge finishing upside for him in the fight on the mat. To me, an under 4.5 rounds at Pick'em seems great.
Yeah, I actually don't hate that. I think Arman's going to fold him in half. To be honest, that's kind of my.
I just don't see the pushback there, really.
I know he counter grapples well with Gamrot, but Hooker, go look at the Islam fight. Now I'm not saying Arman's as good as Islam, he's not, but he's up
Gamrot's
there.
a different level grappler. He's a different
Gamrot's a great grappler, but he's not very physical, Islam got on top of Hooker and he cooked right through him and subbed him. This is it kind of reminds me a bit of when Arman fought Ismagulov and was only minus 170, and everybody was trying to talk themselves into, Udemir Ismagulov because he's a good defensive grappler. And it just turns out, nope, Arman's is built like a gorilla and just took him down over and over again with ease. I don't really see. Hooker could knock him out, I guess, but Arman seems very, very durable to me. Yeah. But if Hooker doesn't knock him out, I don't think he's going to separate on the feet much, really, at all, if at all. I think Arman's more explosive, and I think he hits a lot harder than Hooker does. And in the grappling, I do think he's going to get takedowns pretty easy. I think he's going to get a lot of control pretty easy here. I think the physicality difference is insane. I think Arman is still getting better, whereas I think Hooker, again, not like super old, but like dude's been through some shit. And honestly, prior to the Gamrot fight, the word on Hooker was that he was on the way out the door. I don't know if people remember that. Like, he beat Turner in like a crazy fight, but where he almost got knocked out like twice in that fight. He beat Claudio Puelles, who cares? He got destroyed by Arnold Allen. He got run through by Makachev, knocked out by Michael Chandler. I kind of think Arman's going to knock him out here, honestly. And I think Arman is going to be able to do more or less whatever he wants to do to him. The Gamrot fight was impressive, but I think this is a different test entirely. And it's like, I know Gamrot grappled competitively with Arman, but he didn't really have any offensive success. He just scrambled pretty well. And he's a great scrambler, but I can't see Hooker shutting down Arman's wrestling. I think Arman's going to land big power shots. Yeah, I'm with you. I like the under. I kind of like Arman ITD here. I just feel like this is a really good fight for him.
Okay, so by the way, just to correct myself too, because I was just looking at the lines real quick, and I was like, well, how is Islam ITD minus 170 and the under
Islam?
4.5? What? Or sorry, not Islam, obviously. Arman. And how is the under 4.5 pick'em? It's not pick'em. That was a still. So the under 3.5 is minus 135. Under 4.5 is like minus 180. I still like under 3.
I still don't mind the under 4.5. I think I prefer that to the 3.5, to be honest, because it could take a bit. But yeah, I mean, I like the fight to end ITD, and I think Arman by KO is probably going to be pretty good. So yeah, that's my lean for it. I don't think it's all that compelling of a main event. Like I said, I don't expect it to be particularly competitive. But yeah, I mean, look, it's not a great card, but it is fights on a Saturday morning. Can't really complain about that. We'll have our nights free.
It's an early start.
Yeah, it's an early start.
Arman KO is plus 150, by the way.
It's not great
right now.
It's not great. But yeah, so we'll see what happens. We have a week off next week, and then we are back for Merab Yan 2, where Merab is minus 500, which seems wide. Gotta say, it seems wide. But did you disagree? I mean, 500 is crazy, man.
Listen, where Merab stands, and I'm gonna be honest with you, he's gonna get the game going. He's a guy that, like, we've talked about it like so frequently that, like, if you're not knocking him out, man, it is so tough to win a decision.
I know, but I still think Yan is his toughest test in the division, personally. I really do. So
that's fair.
We'll see. I'll be there on Yan, honestly. I'll watch, see what happens, but I will be there on Peter Yan in that fight. I bet him at minus 185 in the first fight, so
you gotta be there now. Yeah, you gotta have to, right? It's kind of.
I mean, Merab's our guy, right? But I do. This isn't Corey Sandhagen, man. It's not. So.
And people convince themselves on Corey Sandhagen.
Dude, that was crazy.
So will they convince themselves on?
I actually regretted not laying like 350 on Merab after the fight. We both talked about it. Like, I knew it was going to happen. Like, that was. You have a string bean who can't take that with no power against.
People talked about that fight though and said, "Man, 350, that's wild."
I know. I think this is different though. I'm gonna bet Yan. I don't even need to tape the fight. I'm not even gonna rewatch their last fight and talk myself out of it. I'm just going to send the books, take my money. We're sending it on Peter Yan plus 375 here.
That's fair.
But anyway, guys, that'll do it for tonight. Follow me on Twitter, MMA Fox. Follow Danny at Danny_Lags. Drop a like, subscribe, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Peace.